So before we move forward, chapter 13, let's do a little bit of recap. Percentage of children in 2015 to 16 that were considered obese. 18 and a half, 19, you'll probably see 19 on the celebration, okay? So about 18 and a half, just to have a good general idea. I will not trick you. What about adults? What about adults? Percentage of adults? 42%. You will definitely see that again. What is BMI? What does that stand for?
Body mass index.
Body mass index. Very good. What is that a measure of? You
Body
see,
weight and height.
your body weight in relation to your height. Okay, we talk about body composition. The BMI just tells you what proportion of your weight and your height, like what does that look like? They turn it into a percentage. What is a healthy BMI range? Anybody? A healthy BMI range?
18.5, 24.9.
18.5, 24.9. If 1925 helps you remember that, 1925. But 18.5 to 24.9 is a healthy BMI. What do we know that influences our body mass index? What influences our lean muscle mass versus our fat-free mass?
Visceral?
Say that again?
Is it visceral fat?
No, what impacts, what changes our BMI? I mean, yes, visceral fat does. Well, I'll ask a different question. Age. Okay, age changes our muscle composition, right? As we get older, it starts to deteriorate and lose. Me also mentioned gender, race and genetics. What else? Activity. Does the BMI, when we calculate a BMI using our weight and our height, does that take any of those into consideration?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But there are other things that we can measure. We talked about body fat percent, okay, being able to measure that. There's a couple of ways that we can do that. The underwater weighing, the air displacement with the bod pod. Yep, remember that? Air displacement, bod pod. That'll be I believe that's a matching question. Air displacement. Skin calipers, right? Pinching the skin.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's the worst way to test it. Is that one.
You said that one's the worst way?
Well,
Are you claustrophobic?
no.
Well, then you'd be okay in the bod pod.
No, I was talking about the pinchers.
Oh, that doesn't really hurt.
I mean, no, that's why it hurt pain anyways, but I read that it was not the best.
Oh, do you like being pinched?
No.
Does anybody in here like being pinched?
I mean, but it's not bad.
It's not a pinch to harm you, right? It's not a pinch to make sure you're paying attention. Sometimes I'm trying to get my kid's attention or he's not paying attention. I can reach back right behind the back end of his arm and just get a little pinch. Get his attention real quick, and it was just very discreet. It's just more like he just kind of got scared and said, "What was that?"
Well, it's not even that for older ladies. Okay, my sons, because they love to pick on mom, they'll go, I will be doing something, reaching for something, they'll come in and just do like that, and I'm like, really? Could y'all just leave me alone? One of these days, I'm going to be like,
Yeah. Give it back to him.
Still. I did want to know how many questions were on the final. Did you say that already?
75 questions on the final. But yes, there are ways we can measure our body fat percent. We know that as our physical activity level changes, right, we need more calories to keep up with that. But there's a difference between being active and competing. Okay, there's a difference between that, and don't get caught up in protein. You know, a lot of these workout places. How many of you have gym memberships? How many of them have ever been just approached with buying some of the supplements that they have inside the store? Never?
Yeah.
They used to do that quite a bit.
They don't do it as much anymore.
They used to do that quite a bit, and I think that was off-putting to some people because it's not for a majority of us, we don't even need that. But I think it goes back to, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to just improve my health? Am I doing this to change the way that I look? Probably a little bit of both. But if you're trying to put on extra muscle, for men it's a little bit differently. I've had 2 conversations with females in the past couple of days. They're active, they're in the gym, they're lifting weights. They want to be at a healthier weight, which means that they want to gain a little bit. But one, they're not very big. So how, like, mentally, what is your perception of how fast am I going to put on this 4 pounds, the 8 pounds that I'm trying to put on? As a woman, it's going to be harder. Your genetic blueprint says muscle mass is not my priority. I'm more worried about, honestly, I know this sounds crazy and it's going to be a sensitive subject. Your body's more worried about fat tissue because you're the center of reproduction, right? So your body's different.
Was a long time ago.
It still is. Oh, okay. Yes, as you age, those things change. Very good. What is the currency of energy that our body uses? What do we call that? ATP. Yep, ATP.
Oh, God.
There's 2 ways our body can create ATP. What kind of systems create ATP in our body?
Aerobic and anaerobic?
Yes, very good. Aerobic and anaerobic. Which one has oxygen?
Aerobic.
Aerobic does. Aerobic does. Which
Look here, Mia.
which anaerobic system increases the amount of ATP? I need you to remember that one. There are 2 anaerobic systems, lactic acid,
Oh.
and what's the other one? We often use it as a supplement.
Mira?
Creatine, phosphocreatine. Okay, so moving forward, we know that vitamins and minerals do not provide us energy, but we know that it does open up opportunities to produce more energy, right? So as we move along, we've just kind of introduced a little bit. Now we're bringing it all full circle. Several of you here in this class and listening still have an opportunity to make an impact on your health when you get older. Okay, we know that there's a peak for all these things. They don't keep going up. There's no magical number, but as we age, we know that things take a downhill turn. Okay? Kind of like an older vehicle. Why don't we buy older vehicles? Because of the fear of having to replace stuff. It's going to happen when you get older. I mean, hopefully you're not replacing too many things. But how you take care of yourself now impacts what it's going to look like later. What's that?
Just for any younger people in here, definitely do that.
Pay
Don't
attention.
jump off cliffs. Don't do anything stupid. Don't break multiple things. Definitely don't get any
You
bad
can jump
breaks.
off cliffs, just make sure there's water underneath it.
I'm just saying. It was in Texas, whole nother story. But I have so much metal on my body, it's not even funny.
No,
Full effects.
can't pass a
Nope.
metal detector.
I'm just saying. When
She's
you're wild
not,
and
she's
free
not
and
allowed
you're
in,
young.
she's not allowed in the court buildings, is what she's saying.
It's exactly what it is.
Unless she's in
Yeah.
handcuffs.
You might as well just put ankle bracelets.
So,
Yeah,
introduction to nutrition. So we talked about nutrition for athletes. We've talked about nutrition just to live a healthy lifestyle. But what about nutrition when we bring a life into this world? Okay, we're going to start there, and then we're just going to kind of go through the different stages of life. Infancy, childhood, adolescence, older, adult. Generally spans from about 70 years until age of death. 1 second. Oh, an older adult period. They worded that weird. It was like all of these happen from about 70 years until death, so we don't start living until we're 70. Is how I read. Do you read that the same way? That's how I read that. These particular life stages, okay, prenatal period or pregnancy, remember that one, the time between conception and birth. There's also lactation, which is a milk production for breastfeeding, other life stages, infancy, childhood, adolescence, and older adult period. See, it generally spans from about 70 years until age of death. So I don't know if I think that's referring to the older adult period, but some people don't even make it that. So they don't even make adult, they just die in their adolescence years if they don't make it to 70, I guess. Anyway, those things change. Most of the nutrition recommendations presented in this book apply to people who are adults. There are, remember we talked about the kcal per kilogram, calculating your energy needs. That spreadsheet that I shared with you guys calculates your energy needs. For a child, it's different. They're constantly growing. As adults, the whole point is for us to maintain. As children, they're constantly growing and developing, so we want to try to support that. So it's important to pay attention to those. We're going to talk about how challenging that can be a little bit later. It's easier said than done feeding a kid. If you've never tried it, go to a daycare. That's all I'm going to say. So, actually, during my internship, we did rotations, Children's Arkansas Children's, and we were doing, one summer we were part of it was through the Head Start program, but we were measuring consumption of fruits and vegetables for young children. And the place that we went, it wasn't quite, it was almost Alma. It was in that direction. I remember it was a good trip. We went out there a couple times to just go in and observe 3-4-year-olds before they made it into preschool. Observe them eating and recording fruits and vegetables so that we could show a difference in certain educations and whatnot. But anyway, at 3 and 4 years old, how do you think they serve their children? Now, I thought this was very interesting because I wonder if this happens at home. But how do you think those children are served lunch? You think someone plates it for them and hands it to them? They sure enough do. It's country. It's a family style eating, right? Like if you were to go to what's that woman's name with the jail? Paula Dean? Not Paula. She didn't go to jail. It was the other one. But that's it. You're right. No, I have them mixed up with no, the other one. Martha Stewart. I got Martha Stewart and Paula Dean mixed up. But Paula Dean does the country.
And then she goes and cooks.
They bring out the ham in order we're feeding, and they'll bring it all, and then they pass those sides around. Do you think those kids did that when they went home?
No. Ate that when they went home?
Ate like that when they went home. In the school, in the daycare, in that early childhood family style, we would go in and they would put the food on the center of the table, and these 3 and 4 year kids would pass the food around and they would serve themselves.
Good parenting?
No, that was a structured home, because I promise you, it's much different than when they go
Yeah,
home.
I'm sure.
Even the foods they eat is probably much different than when they go home,
That's
right?
it. Yeah, that's it.
But I thought that was pretty neat. So we don't, but the needs are different. Obviously, we don't need, as children, we don't need as much proteins. I mean, we're smaller bodies, but I think that they need to eat more often, right? I know we talk about kids. Well, how do they? It's a fine. I think it's a fine line sometimes, especially in Wicklow. I can't get my child to eat very well at meal times. Are they a good snacker? Oh yeah, they snack all the time.
You know what are you snacking on?
Yeah.
Cheetos and freaking
That's the other thing.
cookies. Don't even get me any cookies.
That's the other thing. But it's, they're snacking all the time and they won't eat at mealtime. Well, children, we'll talk about that later.
They hide stuff under their beds, in their closets.
It becomes
Bad.
a challenge. But there are particular life stages where our energy needs change. Prenatal is one of them. And remember, the time between conception and birth, that's prenatal. You are not prenatal unless you are pregnant. That's what conception means. You become pregnant. Lactation, we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to step back here for a second. I asked the first class these questions. What steps can young women take to prepare for pregnancy? Take folic acid. Very good. We talked about that already. Why is that important, Ms. Lewis?
Whatever's in that pill.
Yeah, there are some birth.
Don't produce enough.
Our body doesn't, most of the time, the folic acid, your needs increase, when you become pregnant. And it doesn't require a whole lot. We're gonna get some of those. Problem is, we don't eat enough leafy green vegetables. That's where we can get a majority of our folic acid from. What's that?
Does that not help with the iron increase or?
The folic doesn't have anything to do with the iron, but they'll put it, the folic acid in your prenatals, and the folic acid specifically is related to 2 birth defects. Remember the spina bifida and the cleft palate? That's why we want to make sure we can do that. What about primary care
For yourself?
supervision? I mean, as a man, a little bit differently for us. We're like, oh, unless I'm on my deathbed, there's no point in me going to the hospital or seeing a doctor. I'm guilty of that myself. But for young women, your bodies are just different. You got a lot more going on.
We don't like it.
That was not part of the question, Amanda.
Okay, but all we know is just being honest.
I think, no, I appreciate that. But I think it's important that in preparation for pregnancy, if I'm trying to get, obviously there are things that we can do to make sure that we have a good pregnancy. Here's the next question, compared to breast milk, and listen to the question. Compared to breast milk, do infant formulas provide the same health benefits for infants?
No.
No,
Why not?
mom has
The mom has like the antibodies
Yeah.
and all the nutrients if you breastfeed for at least 6 months, if you can. I'm not saying that the formulas don't, but if the baby's allergic to formulas, there are some formulas, it's hard to find a formula.
Doesn't breast milk have exactly what
It
they
is.
need?
Exactly what they need, period, yes.
So does formula though.
So they say.
But it doesn't have the same, it doesn't, what'd you say?
Whoa!
Attachment?
Apparently, Miss Lewis is starting to lean on the, what do you call it, the crazy stuff, the conspiracy theorist side, because she said supposedly formula is supposed to have the same stuff in it that breast milk does.
Because I noticed, I tried to breastfeed, my kids didn't like it. My friends did it, their kids do, but their kids are so much bigger than my kids.
Now,
They grew up then, they was,
I can share with you this, breastfed babies are less likely to become obese and overweight.
Well, that makes sense.
Because all my cousins were breastfed, and I mean, my family, none of us were, because my mom just couldn't, and we had 6 kids.
But it also helps mom lose weight.
I know.
Oh, no, there's a
That's
lot
what I'm
of, so
getting at.
there's, so coming back to this,
All of my
do infant
family is
formulas
like big
provide the
around
same
and
health
like
benefits?
My immediate family, they're bigger, heavier set type deal.
I don't,
Yeah, understand.
no, and it does check, yes. No,
I mean, it checks out. I mean, for my whole family, like my dad's considered, the bulky one, but he's always been bulky. Like even looking at baby pictures, he's always just been heavier set. But my mom was 5'4" and 110 pounds when she
There's a
graduated
whole
high school.
span that.
So when she got pregnant, it was fine for a couple, but when it got down the road and after so many kids of her not breastfeeding, that weight just kind of sits there.
yeah, no, it definitely changes things, but to answer the question, no, it doesn't have the same benefits. And you're all kind of saying the same thing. I'll ask you this. Does breast milk change?
It can, depends on what you put in your body.
Based upon what you put in your body, so you said that your children didn't like the breast milk. Could have been what you were eating.
It could
Okay?
be
It could be a number of things.
Yeah, my cousin, she breastfeeds her kids, and like a couple years ago, she always has like a healthy diet, but she had like hot wings one time, and it like messed up her breast milk and like made it taste different or something.
Mm-hmm.
can you be lactose from breast milk?
You can pass lactose, yes. So
Okay, because I'm lactose, and so that's probably why.
so
But they
so a
have
lot of times.
special type of formula.
Right, yeah, but it's a lot of, so that's it's a different kind of breast milk, but if you're already lactose free, you probably weren't drinking milk. But the crazy thing was, that could have been something that they were missing. So, it kind of works both ways. They didn't like, you're not getting that, well, what is lactose in milk? Sugar? It gives the milk the sweetness? I don't know, how many of you ever tasted breast milk? What's that?
I said, so mine was bitter.
I mean,
No, okay, I'm
It
gonna
very
say
well could be.
something that might, y'all just,
how many of you ever tasted breast milk?
I did.
obviously, if you have a
I thought
child,
was a baby.
you have to test it, you wanna make sure it's okay. I mean, what you take into your body, no matter whether it affects your breast milk, to other things in your body, even a man, it will still affect taste of things. So I'm just saying, what you put into your body disperses.
It'll change. That's why if you choose to breastfeed and you want to drink, you're supposed to, and you're
Lots more.
breastfeeding, for every glass, you're supposed to wait an hour, pump, dump, and then you can provide breast milk to the child if you have an alcoholic beverage. But I've tried breast milk before. It's a little sweet. To me, it was.
They like condensed, the milk in can.
Yeah. I mean,
It look like it's
but
milk, but
That,
Carnation?
milk.
carnation,
they can,
condensed milk. But we know that the breast milk changes, and here's the kicker, and this is probably the one that I share the most. This is a very good, well, infant formula versus breast milk. I really know that there is another option. Okay? We got to this point right now, 2022, from breastfeeding. It's natural, it's in our DNA. If that's something that you're interested in doing, talk to your healthcare provider. They will talk about skin-on-skin contact, because skin-on-skin contact can actually improve breastfeeding dramatically. Now here's the key though. I'm in a hospital. I want to breastfeed, but here's my experiences from this. Lactation consultants. Anybody experienced those before?
it's just to make sure that they just come in there and try to help you latch, or the baby latch.
Oh, that's their intentions.
Yeah.
Or they-
Sometimes they're a little
You
rough.
need more than just one section.
You need more than one session, and there's no allotted time. Like, it's in our DNA, so if baby's born, baby gets cleaned up, I want to breastfeed, lay baby down on your chest, and let baby naturally gravitate to your breast. It will happen.
Yep.
It should not be forced, and that's what happens a lot of times. I'm not a lactation consultant, but these are the stories I'm being told with mom. Now, of course, could be distorted just because you just had a baby, everything's on. Like, how many of you remember when you were actually in the hospital after having a baby? All of it?
Yeah, that's the best part.
Oh, okay, what? But is it dramatic?
My last one was.
The last one was, but it could change things. But here comes a lactation consultant. I've got 4 other moms I need to go see today. Oh, you want to breastfeed? Here, not like physically touch you, but they're forceful kind of sometimes.
Yeah, they grab your boob.
They grab you, they're
slap
wanting
the
to,
baby on
hey,
there, and you're like, yo.
You are in control. Now's not the right time. Let me just have some time with my baby, come back in again if I have some more questions. But that's all I've heard from these lactation consultants.
You
Is
don't
that,
really, if you're first parent, or first mom, dad, whatever, I mean, I can see where they wanna send in, but if you've had 3 babies already, you don't need that.
but what if it's your 3rd baby and you've never tried breastfeeding?
Well, I wouldn't have that issue.
And here's the other hand. What if it's my 1st baby and I want to breastfeed, but then my experience with the lactation consultant is bad? What are my chances of trying breastfeeding at my 2nd child?
You either try or give up.
Probably less likely. But to answer the question, I would say breast milk has more health benefits, especially in the first couple of weeks of life, because you're passing on immunities to baby, and you don't do that through formula feeding. In fact, formula feeding wasn't, and then you don't need to remember this, just kind of some WIC history. Formula was invented in about the 70s. Why?
It was the 70s, man.
Mom started going back to work. So originally, and right now, when you think about formula, what socioeconomically, what kind of socioeconomic class do you automatically think of when you think of babies, families, and formula? Is it poor? You think of poor people when you think of formula? You shouldn't.
Well, because it's normally expensive.
It is expensive.
It's expensive.
It is expensive, and you'd be even more upset if you knew how much it costs to make it. Pennies.
Well, but they know people will buy it.
Well, they have to. In some cases, they have to.
Yeah, that's awful.
It is awful. It's extortion. It's extortion.
Some of the companies,
Yeah, because people on weeks still have to go buy extra things.
Sometimes, but a couple reasons. So one, it was invented in the 70s because mom started working. So originally it was a sign of wealth. But then they changed that and realized that now that people started having to go back to work, or people started choosing formula because it was a little bit more socially acceptable, I guess, instead of breastfeeding. But even now, moms still get some. Like, I don't even know why. Why are you even engaging in someone? Did someone chooses to breastfeed in public versus spoon feeding my baby? Why is it any different?
people get offense.
Turn your head. It's not your
Yeah,
business.
no, I'm just saying, that's
I know.
why, because people get offensive.
Because they wear their feelings on their sleeves when they should just put them in their back pocket and mind their own
That's
stinking
this
business.
generation. That's this generation.
You're feeding your child. You're not saying the same thing to a person that's spoon feeding them, are you? It's the same thing.
Or chewing up food and putting it in the baby mouth, now that's nasty. I say, I just look at it. That's nasty.
We're just gonna say, we all appreciate you being here listening to this.
I mean, we want society's approval, and we try to do things that we make decisions that we think is best for our children, best for ourselves, and we're constantly being ridiculed by people outside of living in our environment. Have a nice day. Your hair's pretty, by the way. Whatever. Just ignore it. And that's part, some of this too. Children, what are we constantly doing with our children? Comparing them to other people's children? Or vice versa? My girlfriend's got a child that's 2 weeks older than mine, and he's already walking, and mine hasn't even crawled yet. It's okay. It is okay. It is okay. It's probably because you carry your child around too much, not because your child has a developmental issue. My youngest didn't start walking until he was 15 months old. You know why? Smart little kid. Kids are smart. Kids are very intelligent. At a very young age, we had hardwood floors. He figured out that if he banged his head against the floor, we'd come pick him up. To this day, I can walk up to him and thump him in the forehead, and he immediately gets a big knot on his forehead. But he figured that out. We couldn't sit him down. If he wanted to be carried or wanted to be, he couldn't figure out that he could just crawl there, or maybe he did. He just didn't want to do it. They figure those things out. They will tell you. Listen. Conception occurs the moment a male sperm enters the female's egg. Preconception period occurs before a woman of childbearing age becomes pregnant, conceives a man who sexually matures, fathers a child. I think we all kind of understand that. Remember the prenatal period happens after conception, before birth. Usually a full term is considered 38 to 42 weeks. During the first 2 weeks after conception, the fertilized egg divides repeatedly, forming a mass inside the uterus. Okay, the female reproductive organ that protects developing organisms. You will see these terms again. The mast cells bury itself into the nutrient lining of the uterus and continues to develop. So after the first 2 weeks, it falls into the uterus. Then it becomes an embryo. Okay, once it attaches to in the lining wall of the uterus, it becomes an embryo and increases in size and starts forming organs. About 8 weeks after conception, the developing human is referred to as a fetus. Okay, so conception, embryo, and then fetus. Prenatal period is divided into 3 stages or trimesters. And we're going to watch this video right quick. Hopefully it has better picture than the last time. I don't know, maybe it was just slow.
Nutritional status of a woman before conception is important.
Didn't change.
The fertilized egg is not very susceptible to toxic agents. Any trauma at this stage will result in a termination of the pregnancy, most often unnoticed by the mother. Once the embryo attaches to the uterus wall, it will begin its growth in earnest. The cells are still not susceptible to nutritional deficiencies or other dangers from the health and lifestyle choices of the mother. The embryo continues to be susceptible to radiation-induced birth defects. These include cataracts, reduced growth, skeletal defects, microphthalmia, microcephaly, and mental retardation. At 3 weeks, the embryo begins to form the rudimentary organs of the fetus.
If you'll notice, week 3 right here introduces a high risk level of the central nervous system. And then basically what this is, it's going to talk about is, this is the most, that first trimester, those first 12, 14 weeks, all of your central nervous system, your heart, your limbs, your eyes, all of that's being developed in that first trimester. That's why it's important. We're not asking you not to be excited about being pregnant. That's why a lot of couples wait until after the first trimester to tell people that they're pregnant, is to get, because if there's a miscarriage, most of the time it happens in this first trimester. But as you can see, development of that embryo into a fetus, and then as it starts to progress, it's kind of neat. Pay attention to this little thing up here. But first couple weeks, do you even know that you're pregnant at this point? You're waiting on missing that time of the month, or maybe you're just waiting on some feelings. We're going to talk about those here in a second as well. But let me let you finish this guy.
The embryo is now sensitive to nutritional inadequacies. At this stage, early alcohol exposure can lead to non-viability of the fetus and spontaneous abortion, or fetal alcohol syndrome in the resulting newborn.
That'll be a question. You've already
Other
had one
risks
question.
are presented by high intakes of vitamin A, medications, and prohibited drugs, and trauma. The development of the central nervous system continues for 16 weeks, so the central nervous system is at high risk throughout that period. At 4 to 5 weeks, the central nervous system, heart, limbs, eyes, and ears are all developing and readily affected by inadequate nutritional status. For the heart and limbs, risks diminish after 6 weeks. For eyes and ears, the risks continue for 8 and 9 weeks longer. After 9 weeks, some of these risks diminish. By 6 weeks, the heart is beating, the eyes and lid buds are present.
6 weeks.
This period shows high risk for major structural abnormalities to the central nervous system, eyes, ears, palate, and teeth, and moderate risk to the heart and limbs. The first trimester is the period when the fetus is most susceptible. The high risk to the palate appears to be limited from 6 to 9 weeks, while risk to the teeth and genitalia continue right through to term. At 8 weeks, the fetus is about 1 inch long. Note the lengthening of the limbs. The risks at this stage are physiological defects and minor structural abnormalities. In the second trimester, undernutrition has a greater effect on the mother than on the fetus. However, hereditary diseases and prescription and recreational drugs are still a danger. At 16 weeks, the fetus is 6 inches long. Physiological defects and minor structural abnormalities are still the major forms of risk, with moderate risk to the central nervous system, eyes, teeth, and external genitalia.
At that point, obviously you can see after that first trimester, we've got through a lot of the major developments of organs and everything that the baby needs to be born healthy, right? Then between 16 and 30, 32, 30 to 32, baby's fully developed. At that point, baby is just going to get bigger. And then right here at the end of this little video, he mentions that at 32 weeks, 34 weeks, your baby will basically gain about 5 pounds at that point. At week 30, 32, baby's fully developed, baby's just getting bigger. and you're expected to gain about a half a pound a week just in baby alone. See how sensitive that subject is?
Well, I mean, nobody, when you're freaking 19 and you're having a baby, nobody says, okay, you gained 70 pounds. Nobody says stay away from McDonald's and don't eat the damn French fries. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But then I only gained my normal 30 because I knew I was smarter with my second son. So, but Lord, the stretch marks will never go away.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. That is a lot. And I was itty bitty. I was like 110 soaking wet. And then I put on 70 pounds plus whatever. I'm like, good God, I'm a cow. So, I got over it. I was able to eat my McDonald's French fries on my steak. Okay, anyway, sidebar.
It's okay. But you're expected to, we'll talk about weight gain and whatnot, but throughout the prenatal period, the embryo fetus depends entirely on mom for survival. Okay, during most of the pregnancy, expectant mother nourishes her embryo through the placenta, the organ of pregnancy that connects the uterus to the embryo via the umbilical cord. You'll see that term again. We've already been tested about this. A low birth weight. A fetus generally needs to spend at least 37 weeks developing within the uterus for its organs to be physiologically mature enough to survive after birth without the need for special care. Birth weight is a major factor that determines whether a baby is healthy and survives his or her first year of life. Not going to disagree that it determines whether the baby is healthy, but if I'm not a very big person, am I going to have big babies? I don't think that that's with all cases, but I can tell you this, after whatever that weight is, we want to see that continue to gain weight after baby. And it's about an ounce, half an ounce a week. And it doesn't sound like a whole lot.
Well, I've seen a lot of preemies that just, you couldn't even tell.
I'll get to that here in a second. It happens quite often. About 10% of babies in 18 were preterm. Born before 37 weeks is considered preterm. Looking at this picture right here in my internship, through our rotations, I got to do some rotations at Arkansas Children's Hospital, and I'm curious. Like, I have a very strong stomach. There's a lot of things that I can handle, and when you're in an internship, those are opportunities. One, that is a working interview. Okay, I want to share that with you. Regardless of whatever field you're going into, your rotations are working interviews. Secondly, if someone asks you, hey, you want to go sit in and watch this, or you want to go do it. Go do it. Even if you don't like it, because that was kind of with me at this point. I got to go to the NICU at Children's Hospital. As a matter of fact, they had brought in an infant that was born, had some complications. They weren't able to get all of the
black stuff?
yes. Dang, it's escaped my
Meconium.
meconium. They couldn't get all the meconium out of the baby, so they had to bring it into Children's Hospital, and they ended up having a tube feed. Thought that I was interested in that until I walked into the NICU and I saw a baby sitting in one of these little incubators, and something started tugging at my heart, and then I was like, gotta leave. Can't do this. I could not work in that environment. But I think it's important that you expose yourself to that, because I think, obviously, they are dependent at this point, after they're born, they're dependent on you.
Nurses only.
Nurses. And we talk about the breastfeeding. You guys are aware of breast milk banks? Milk banks? I know there's one in Springfield, and I would imagine there's one in Little Rock. But if you aren't able to produce, or maybe you're taking some medication that won't allow you to breastfeed, but you want your baby to get breast milk, that's what those milk banks are for.
Oh, that still is a little scary though. I know they test the back.
Same thing as
I
blood.
I know, I get it.
You don't
They
question
test
blood
it.
when you're laying in bed and you're like, I gotta get some red blood cells, right? Same thing.
I'm scared of that. I think I really.
What, getting red blood cells or
Yeah,
donating
because
milk?
they don't, I donate because I know I'm safe, but I don't want nobody else's blood.
No, that's true. Well, yeah, I mean, it's good to donate blood. I think I think it's good for your body. But nutrition-related signs of pregnancy, what's the most common thing that you guys can think of? If you were pregnant, what's the first thing you're looking for?
Food,
Well,
sorry.
what's the first thing you recognize? You probably are looking for food, but what's the first thing you recognize?
Oh,
Like, what was the first thing that you recognized when you knew you were pregnant?
Craving something.
Okay.
Weird cravings?
Throwing up and my breast was sore.
Okay. Miss Lewis said morning sickness. Well, maybe not. They call it morning sickness. Did
late.
you have it? But later in life, later in the pregnancy?
Mama's in the afternoons.
Yeah. So morning. They
They're
call
weird.
it morning sickness, but it literally can happen all day. It can happen in the afternoon. It can happen in the evening. It's just your body. It's a common sign of pregnancy. Nausea.
Smells, everything.
Eh,
Couldn't smell bacon. I had to leave.
I talk about that all the time when I was in WIC, was these more, and how to work around those. If it's triggers, identifying those triggers and not being around them, because what happens if I'm not able to eat, and especially in that first trimester?
Oh, it's,
What happens to your body if you're not able to provide enough for you and for baby?
you get sick and lose weight.
Your body starts breaking down your resources. Remember we talk about osteoporosis, and it's a higher frequency in older adult women?
Calcium out of that bone.
Yes. Yes. As young adults, take care of your body. Know that, I just gotta work around it. It's not, I'm not gonna call it, I'm not gonna say that it's an excuse not to eat, but at this point, you have to make an effort. And it doesn't have to be a meal. It could be a tablespoon of peanut butter. We have to, something is better than nothing at this point. It's cheese, right? Miss Lewis said that her breast size changed and they were sore. That's another one. Okay, in the first trimester, most women experience physical signs that they are pregnant, such as enlarged breasts and morning sickness. Other complaints, extreme tiredness, swollen feet, constipation, heartburn, bitchiness is not up here, but it should be. Just kidding.
Hey, but men have that with, no, but seriously, I wouldn't even have to tell my husband, and he would come in, man, I just really want to be going to glass of orange juice. I was like, how the hell do you know?
Oh.
He doesn't drink orange juice except that one time.
I
Every time
tell you,
he drink it, I'm like, well, okay.
Especially if you're emotionally and intimately connected to somebody. I think that they call those
Some kind of
some kind of pains or
I
pregnancy.
don't-
What you said?
Sympathy.
Sympathy
Yeah.
pains. If you want to, I guess. My problem is I don't have feelings, so I never.
Well, more his stomach, though. I'm sure that's
But and as far as the hormones and some of those other things changing, we know that hormones will change. Hormone signals the breast increase in size in preparation for lactation. One of my friends, they have two older daughters. Oh, I say older daughters. They're still little, and they're a young couple. They just recently found out that she was pregnant with a boy. But she said the first two, her girls she was sick all the time. Wasn't bad pregnancy, she just didn't feel good. This one, she feels fine except for everything makes her mad. Like everything just annoys her. So there's some changes that happen, okay? When we talk about the breast, prolactin, remember this one, it is a hormone that stimulates the development of milk-producing tissue. It does not produce milk. It does not produce milk. It just stimulates the development of the milk-producing tissues in the breast. Only in women. Prolactin. However, a pregnant woman's breast does not form milk because of high levels of progesterone, and that won't go away, and it won't drop until after she's born. And literally, it's like it jumps off a cliff. That progesterone. To help control mild morning sickness, avoid odors. Amanda said that it was bacon for her, especially fried, greasy foods that trigger nausea. Just trying to help with some of those things. If you vomit and it starts to look like coffee grounds, that's usually a sign that there's some blood involved, so I would get to a physician, okay? But pay attention to your body, what's going on. That's where I left last time. I actually stopped at morning sickness, so I think I'll stop there. I want to add